She laughed while I stood there holding the necklace I bought her. That stupid laugh. Sharp, high-pitched, the kind she used when she was performing for a crowd. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Because 10 seconds earlier, she'd shouted across the patio, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "You'll never be good enough for me." Everyone turned. Glasses froze midair. The music kept playing, but it suddenly felt like background noise to someone else's nightmare. And me? I just stood there. Still. Like my bones had stopped responding. Holding that necklace like it meant something. Like I still meant something. She didn't even flinch after she said it. Just took a sip of her drink, leaned back into her chair like she'd made some offhand comment about the weather. But I saw it. The flicker in her friend's eyes. One of them mouthed, "What the hell?" Another looked at me like I was the one who'd ruined the party. One even tried to give me a sympathetic smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. I set the box down on the table beside the cake, nodded once, and walked away. I didn't take my keys. I didn't grab my jacket. I didn't even take my phone. I just left. Walked through the backyard gate, down the alley behind their trash bins, past the same fence I once painted for her when her dad was sick, and kept going until my legs burned. I didn't cry. Not then. But the thing no one tells you is that heartbreak isn't a thunderclap. It's a slow bruise. You feel the sting later, when the adrenaline dies and your body realizes you're alone. By the time I got to the park, the sun had set. The wind picked up. I sat on a bench that smelled like old beer and pine needles and watched the lights from the houses blink one by one. That's when the messages started. Not from her. From them. Her friends. "Are you okay?" That wasn't cool. I told her she was out of line. She's still drunk. But what she said, man, "I'm so sorry. Call me if you need anything." I stared at the screen. My battery was at 2%. No one had messaged me all night, until now. Until after she cut me open with one sentence. I typed 3 words, then deleted them. What do you even say when the person you loved most just confirmed your worst fear? In public, no less. So I just sat there, phone dying in my hand, heart already halfway there. I didn't know where I was going next. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going back to that house. Not yet. Because the next part wasn't going to be quiet. And it damn sure wasn't going to be polite. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat in the car with my dead phone and a mind running laps in the dark. By 5:12 a.m., I was back on our street. The porch light was still on. Her car was parked crooked like always. Nose too far over the sidewalk, as if parking straight was beneath her. I stood across the street for 15 minutes. Just staring at the house I used to call home, like I was trying to remember what it felt like when I still believed she loved me. And then I went in. The front door was unlocked. Of course it was. She never locked it unless I reminded her. Inside, it smelled like cinnamon air freshener and something sour, maybe wine. There were shoes kicked off by the couch and an empty glass tipped sideways on the coffee table. No Fallon in sight. I wasn't planning to snoop. Really, I wasn't. But then I noticed something strange. The hallway drawer, her drawer, was pulled open about 4 inches. Just enough to be unmissable. That drawer is her stuff zone. Random receipts, expired coupons, bobby pins, lip balm she never finishes. But today, there was something else inside. A phone. Not hers. Not the one I bought her. A second phone. It was older. Cracked screen. No case. It looked dead, but I tried the power button anyway, and it buzzed. Locked, of course. No facial ID. But then the screen flashed for a moment before dying again. There was a notification still half visible. "See you Sunday night, same place. Don't forget, no rings." I froze. Sunday night. That was the night I thought she was at her sister's helping with wedding decorations. She even brought home tulle and those little plastic diamonds you glue to centerpieces. So where the hell was this message from? And what did it mean, no rings? I sat on the floor, back against the hall wall, phone still in my hand. It felt like I'd stepped into someone else's marriage. One I didn't even recognize. A light turned on down the hallway. Fallon's voice, groggy and sharp. "What the hell are you doing?" I stood slowly. She was wearing one of my old hoodies, the one with the paint stain from when we redecorated the bedroom I paid for. Her eyes darted to the phone in my hand and widened, just for a second. Not shock. Not guilt. Just calculation. "You left," she said coldly. "You don't live here anymore." "I just came to get some stuff," I said. My voice cracked halfway through. "Didn't mean to wake you." She crossed her arms. "Well, you did. And you can't just break in and start going through my things." I held up the phone. "Whose is this?" I don't know, she said too fast. It's probably yours. One of your old work phones. I never had a second phone. She stepped forward. Curtis, just leave, okay? Before this gets more pathetic than it already is. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because even in that moment, after she publicly humiliated me, after I found proof that something was very off, she was still trying to act like I was the embarrassing one. I didn't say anything else. I just walked into the bedroom, grabbed a duffel bag, shoved in some clothes and my toothbrush, and walked out. Before I closed the door behind me, she said something I'll never forget. You should have stayed gone. And you know what? Maybe she was right. But as I got into my car, phone still in hand, a notification buzzed again before the screen blacked out. Miss you already kiss mark. It wasn't just a backup phone. It was a secret life. And I had just unlocked the first crack in it. I didn't go to work the next morning. Didn't call in either. Just pulled into the Walmart parking lot, parked at the far end where no one could see me, and sat in my truck with the dead burner phone on the passenger seat like it might whisper the truth if I stared long enough. She was cheating on me. I wasn't ready to say it out loud, but my gut already knew it. And the worst part? I didn't even feel angry. I just felt stupid. For months, I'd convinced myself the distance was because of stress, hormones, family drama, whatever excuse she tossed my way. I believed every word because I didn't want to admit I was losing her. Or maybe, more honestly, I didn't want to admit I'd already lost her and she'd just forgotten to tell me. After sitting in silence for what felt like an hour, I got out and walked into the store. I didn't need anything from Walmart. I just needed to be around people who didn't know I was a joke. I wandered the aisles like a ghost, grabbed a pack of gum and some cheap socks, just to look normal. At the self-checkout, I realized I was still wearing my shirt inside out. I left without correcting it. Back in the truck, I plugged the burner phone into my own charger. It buzzed to life after a few minutes. The screen flickered, battery at 3%. I adjusted the brightness and opened the message app. There were only a few contacts saved, all without names. Just numbers. But one of them, the one she'd received the "Miss you already kiss mark" text from, had an entire thread of messages. And I read every single one. My stomach twisted so hard I thought I'd throw up between the driver's seat and the console. They'd been talking for months. Mostly short texts, lots of emojis. Times, dates, hidden meanings. A few things I didn't understand. Inside jokes maybe, or codes. Sometimes just, same hotel as before. Or window side table this time. Or that blue one you wore last time. She even sent photos. Not nude, not anything that would break a platform's rules. But intimate. Her in lingerie. A mirror selfie biting her lip. A close-up of her hand holding a hotel keycard. Once, a photo of a wine glass next to a man's wrist. His sleeve was rolled halfway up. Tan skin. A dark leather watch band. That was all I could see, but I stared at it like the answers were hidden in the pixels. There were no names mentioned. But I noticed something else. His replies were mostly at night. Late night. And they were always short. Never affectionate, never emojis. Just logistics. Like she was just an appointment. That hit me harder than the betrayal itself. I wasn't even competing with someone who loved her. I was being replaced by someone who treated her like a recurring meeting on their calendar. Suddenly, I felt a weird urge. Not to confront her. Not to cry. But to call the number. I wanted to hear his voice. Just to know who he was. What kind of man makes a married woman feel like I was the ghost in my own house? So I did it. I dialed the number before I could second-guess myself. My hands were shaking so bad, I nearly dropped the phone before it rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. Click. Yeah, a deep voice answered. He sounded calm. Slightly annoyed. Like I'd interrupted something important. I didn't speak. Hello, he repeated. Still, I said nothing. Who is this? Then silence. The line stayed open for a few more seconds before he hung up. But something about the voice, it was familiar. Not from TV. Not from a stranger in a gas station. This was someone I'd heard before. And not just once. The more I played it back in my head, the more sick I felt. The way he clipped his words. The tone. That slight drawl. And then it hit me. The voice belonged to someone I'd shaken hands with. Someone who'd been inside my house. I felt everything inside me sink like a cinder block in water. Because now I wasn't just suspicious. I had a list of names. And at the top of that list was a man I'd invited to our table more than once. I didn't want to believe it was him. I paced the living room of a cheap motel for over an hour, trying to convince myself I was wrong. The wallpaper was peeling near the AC unit. The mattress creaked like a haunted porch every time I moved. But nothing made me as uncomfortable as the possibility circling my brain on a loop like a vulture. It couldn't be Wes. It couldn't be Wes. He was my best friend since high school. He was the guy who gave a toast at our wedding, who helped me move Fallon's junk drawer into our new place, who lent me $200 once when my brakes went out and never asked for it back. He was family, practically lived in our guest room the year he got divorced. But that voice, that damn voice on the phone. I opened my laptop, logged into Facebook, searched his profile. There he was, smiling in a ski photo I wasn't invited to join. Fallon had liked the photo. So had her sister. One of the comments, "Glad to see you back on your feet." Winking face from Fallon herself. My stomach dropped. I checked the date. It was a Sunday night. Same night, she claimed she was staying at her sister's because she needed space and was too drained to deal with my insecurities. I scrolled deeper. Old photos of him at our place. On our porch, helping me fix the fence. At her birthday dinner. Laughing. Hand resting lightly on her shoulder in one shot. Just enough to seem harmless, unless you were looking for it. I went to his tagged photos. Found another post from a local bar. Same night. Same damn night. Fallon wasn't in the photo, but the same wine glass was. The same watch was. The brown leather band with the brass buckle. I sat back, closed the laptop, and stared at the motel ceiling. The paint was water-stained in the corner. Looked like a map of all the places I hadn't gone because I was too busy trying to keep a woman happy who was busy loving someone else. I was shaking, not with anger, but that helpless, gut-sick feeling like when you're a kid and realize your parents can't fix something. It made me rethink everything. All those late nights when she said she was with her mom. All those weekends Wes came over when I was working overtime. That time I came home early from the night shift and they were watching a movie, sitting very far apart on the couch, like they'd moved the second they heard my key in the lock. It was all there, hidden in plain sight. And I didn't see it because I never thought I had to. That's the worst part of betrayal. It's not just the act, it's the rewriting of every memory. Like someone edited the footage of your life, and you don't know what was ever real. I sat in that motel until 3:47 a.m. before I finally did what any pathetic, heartbroken idiot does. I called her. She didn't pick up, so I left a voicemail. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't even say Wes's name. I just said, "I know, and I hope he was worth it." Then I threw the burner phone into the motel trash, grabbed my keys, and drove again. No destination, just motion, because standing still felt too much like being buried alive. But I wasn't done, not by a long shot. Because if Fallon thought she could burn down my life and get applause for it, she underestimated one thing. I wasn't planning to burn quietly, and I had a new number saved in my phone now. Her sister, the one who always said, "If he ever hurts you, I'll help you bury the body." Turns out, it worked the other way around too. I didn't expect her sister to answer. To be honest, I was calling her more out of desperation than strategy. My hands were trembling on the screen, and I'd already half prepared myself for it to go to voicemail, or worse, for Fallon to answer. I thought maybe they were together. Maybe they'd laugh at me on speaker, roll their eyes, and tell me to move on. But when the call picked up, and I heard that voice say, "Hello." Quiet, unsure, I froze. "Samantha?" I finally managed. Pause. "Curtis." Her voice cracked my name like it was a sin to speak it. "Yeah. Sorry. I know this is weird. She didn't tell me what happened," Samantha said, cutting me off. "She just said you left dramatically and were making a thing out of nothing." I actually laughed. That hollow kind of laugh that sounds like someone choking on dust. Of course she said that. "What's going on?" she asked, and I heard genuine worry in her tone. "You okay?" I hesitated. Then I told her. Not everything, not yet. Just the outline. That Fallon humiliated me in front of her friends. That she had a second phone. That I found messages. That I recognized the man's voice. I didn't say Wes's name. I wanted to see if she would. Samantha didn't gasp or scream or deny it. She didn't even sound surprised. She just said one word. Finally. My stomach clenched. What? I told her this would happen. That if she kept playing games, someone would eventually find out. I gripped the steering wheel so tight I could hear the leather creak. "So you knew?" She sighed. "I didn't know for sure, but I suspected. I didn't think it was my place." "Samantha, she's your sister." "I know that," she snapped, suddenly defensive. And you're my brother-in-law. Or were. Do you know how many times I tried to talk to her? She'd lie straight to my face. One minute she's crying that she's lonely. The next she's posting selfies from rooftop bars. I stopped asking questions. I didn't want to know. There was a pause. Then her voice softened. I'm sorry, Curtis. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you know where she was the night before our anniversary? Silence. I waited. More silence. And then, quietly. Oh God. What? I wasn't going to say anything, because it didn't make sense at the time. She told me she had to pick up a cake for you from this little place out in Mason. Said she'd be back in an hour. I remembered that day. She'd come home late. Said traffic was bad. The cake was dry. It had the wrong name on it. Literally. It said, "Happy birthday, Carl." I thought it was some joke I didn't get. She texted me a picture of her holding the box. Samantha continued. But I noticed something weird. In the mirror behind her, there was a jacket hanging on the wall. I blinked. So, it was a man's jacket. Not yours. Brown suede. With a logo I recognized. Wes wore it to Thanksgiving last year. My mouth went dry. She was in his apartment, Samantha said. And I think she used the old cake excuse as a cover. I felt the room tilt. Not literally, but emotionally. Like the center of everything just shifted again. The night before our anniversary. When I stayed up late writing a letter to tuck in the flowers. When I cleaned the whole apartment and made her playlist on Spotify. She was with him. With Wes. That was the night I told her I wanted to try for kids again. That I was ready. That I trusted her. Samantha was still talking, but I could barely hear her. Everything sounded like I was underwater. I didn't know it then, she said. I swear. But when you asked me just now, I believe you, I said hoarsely. And I did. Because her voice was shaking, and Fallon's never did. Fallon always knew exactly what lie came next. Samantha hesitated. Curtis, can I tell you something else? Yeah. She was planning to leave you. I didn't respond. She told me last month. Said she was bored. That you were predictable. That Wes made her feel alive again. There it was. That word. Predictable. I used to think being stable was a good thing. That showing up, staying loyal, and being emotionally available were qualities a grown woman would value. Turns out, predictable men make great fallbacks. But never front page. Never the one she posts about. Never the one who gets the real version of her. And certainly never the one she chooses when the fantasy needs more adrenaline. I thanked Samantha, hung up, and sat there in silence until my coffee went cold. Then I drove. Not to Fallon. Not to Wes. I drove to a place I hadn't been in years. My dad's old cabin in Boone County. The one that barely has power and smells like cedar and mice. I needed to disappear. Just for a while. Because what I was going to do next, it wouldn't be rage. Or revenge. It would be surgical. The cabin hadn't changed since my father died. Cold air that smelled like smoke and old memories. I used to come here as a kid when he wanted to teach me about silence. Back then, it felt boring. Now it felt like anesthesia. No phone service. No neighbors. Just the kind of stillness that makes you hear your own pulse. I lit the fireplace with a half-burned matchbook and sat there watching the flames eat through the wood, thinking about how simple everything used to be before Fallon turned my life into a riddle I couldn't solve. Every time I replayed the moment she yelled, "You'll never be good enough for me," I felt something snap deeper. She didn't just cheat. She dismantled the person I was built to be. I wasn't the kind of guy who plotted revenge. I was the kind who fixed leaks, paid bills, made breakfast. But sometimes pain mutates into clarity. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I didn't need to scream or beg or ruin her car. Fallon's biggest weakness wasn't pride, it was image. She needed everyone to believe she was flawless, adored, innocent. So if she built her whole world on lies, all I had to do was remove one pillar. The rest would fall on its own. I spent 2 days in that cabin writing down everything I could remember. Dates, messages, places she said she was, what she wore, what she posted online. I cross-checked them against Wes's tagged photos, against screenshots I still had on my cloud drive, even against receipts in our shared email. Every pattern lined up. Every girl's night matched a night Wes wasn't posting. Every work trip was a weekend he was off the grid. By the third day, the plan took shape. I wasn't going to confront her in private. I was going to let the truth find her in the one place she couldn't control, her own circle. The same crowd that once laughed when she humiliated me. The same women who texted, "You didn't deserve that." I drove back to town before sunrise, parked down the street from our house, and waited. At 7:16 a.m., Wes pulled up. In my driveway, I watched him get out of his car holding a coffee tray. He looked comfortable, like he'd been doing this for weeks. He knocked once, then used his own key. That sound, the metallic click of my front door unlocking, nearly broke me. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white, forcing myself not to move. If I stormed in now, all I'd have was chaos. I needed evidence. So I waited. And when they finally left together, laughing like they were starring in a bad commercial for betrayal, I followed. Not close enough to spook them, just enough to see where they went. A quiet diner on 4th and Maple. She touched his hand across the table. He didn't pull away. When they left, I parked in the same spot. Went inside. Same waitress I'd seen there with Fallon once before. She recognized me instantly. "Oh, she just missed you," she said with a polite smile. "She's such a sweetheart." I almost laughed at the irony. "Yeah," I said. "Real sweetheart." Before I left, I slipped a 20 under my plate and wrote 2 words on the napkin. "Tell Wes thanks." That night, I didn't go home. I went to Trisha's, the same Trisha whose birthday barbecue started all this. I told her I had something to show her, something she needed to see before she kept defending Fallon. She let me in, nervous, curious. I showed her the screenshots, the time-stamped texts, the photo with the jacket. She didn't speak for a long time. Then she whispered, "Oh my God, Curtis, she told everyone you were jealous. That you made it up." I smiled. "Yeah. Well, consider this my fact-checking phase." Trisha didn't promise to stay quiet. She didn't have to. By morning, every one of Fallon's friends would know. I'd planted the spark. All I had to do was watch the fire spread. As I drove away, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have talked to Trisha." No name. But I didn't need one. Wes had finally decided to text back. And for the first time in weeks, I smiled. Not because I was winning, but because I finally had proof that he was scared. Wes didn't send another message after that first one. "You shouldn't have talked to Trisha." Short. Controlled. No name, no emoji. But I could practically hear his voice vibrating through the screen. A man used to being invisible in his crimes. Now suddenly, very visible. Very exposed. I didn't respond. Instead, I waited. I knew he'd tell her. I knew Fallon would panic. Not because I had proof, she already knew that, but because I was quiet. Silence scares guilty people more than accusations. And when you've built your life on deception, you don't fear punishment. You fear exposure. By the next morning, the wildfire had started. I didn't need to light it. I'd just passed the match to the right person. Trisha. She'd sent screenshots to their group chat. Told the girls everything I showed her. Fallon's backup phone. The texts. The jacket. The voice I recognized. The timeline. The wine glass. The fake birthday cake. According to Samantha, Fallon was losing her mind. She went full PR mode. Claimed I was hacking her phone, stalking her, obsessed. Called Trisha a jealous spinster for siding with me. Told the other girls it was a weird emotional abuse tactic I was using to win sympathy. But here's the thing about people like Fallon. They're brilliant liars until the lies stop sinking. All it takes is one version being slightly off, and suddenly everyone starts asking questions. By noon, 2 more of her friends texted me. "I had no idea it was that bad. She told me you were the one who cheated. I feel sick." And the third message, the one that made my heart stop. "Curtis, I need to tell you something. It's about Fallon and Wes and your bachelor party." I sat there, hand frozen over the screen. It was from Lindsay, one of Fallon's quieter friends. The kind who smiled politely at parties and never took sides. I'd almost forgotten she was at our wedding. I called her. She didn't waste time. "I didn't want to get involved," she said, voice low. "But now I think you deserve the truth." "What truth?" "I didn't see it happen," she said. "But I heard something. The night before your wedding, I stopped by Fallon's hotel room to drop off a bag. She was gone. Wes was in the hallway, shirtless, sweaty, and he froze when he saw me. My throat tightened. I asked if everything was okay. He said he'd just come from the gym. But the hotel didn't have a gym on that floor. Then Fallon came out of a different room, smoothing down her hair. Her face went white when she saw me. "And you didn't say anything?" "I didn't know what to think," she said. "You two seemed happy. I thought maybe I misunderstood. And then when you guys got married, I figured maybe I wanted to misunderstand." I sat back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. She was cheating before we even said I do. That wasn't betrayal. That was foundation rot. My entire marriage had been built on a lie so deep that even the wedding rings were contaminated. I thanked Lindsay, hung up, and didn't cry. Not this time. I drove home instead. Yes, home. The key still worked. Fallon wasn't expecting me. She was at a photo shoot for a brand that was already beginning to distance itself from her, thanks to the quiet rumors spreading through her polished online life. I walked through the front door like I owned the place, because technically, I still did. Picked up the folder from the kitchen counter where I'd left it the night before. A carefully printed packet of texts, photos, date comparisons, and a notarized letter from a divorce attorney. Then I took a deep breath and walked back out. To Wes's office. He worked in tech. Marketing manager at a mid-sized firm where image mattered. Fallon used to brag about it. He's too talented to be stuck in this town, she'd say. Wes should be in L.A. Yeah, well, Wes was about to be very local again. I walked past the receptionist, said I had an appointment. She glanced at the folder and let me through. I walked into the open-plan office with the calm of a man who had nothing left to lose, and found Wes at his desk. He looked up, saw me, went pale. Before he could say anything, I placed the folder on his desk. You've got about 20 minutes before the group chat finishes reading this, I said. So I'd suggest starting damage control now. He stared at it like it was a loaded weapon. Then I leaned in. You didn't just screw over a friend, I whispered. You picked someone quiet. Predictable. Someone you thought would crawl away. He didn't respond. You should have remembered, I said. Quiet doesn't mean weak. I left before security was called. I didn't run. Didn't gloat. Just walked out into the parking lot and into the sunlight like I'd just left a funeral, one I'd been mourning for years. 3 days later, Fallon called me. I didn't answer. She texted. Paragraphs. First defensive, then pleading, then emotional blackmail dressed in nostalgia. This isn't you. You don't destroy people. You're not like this. You've always been gentle. You're making a scene. You're turning our private life into a circus. We were us, Curtis. That meant something. I read every message once, then deleted them. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. That was the strange part. I thought I'd feel triumphant when the fallout began, when her brand partnerships paused, when her girls stopped commenting under her perfectly curated photos, when her world of faux perfection collapsed one curated post at a time. But I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. Because the more everything fell apart for her, the more I realized I didn't need to be in the rubble picking up pieces that were never mine to carry in the first place. Fallon had spent years convincing me I was lucky to be with her. But looking around now, standing in the little one-bedroom rental I'd just signed the lease for, coffee brewing in a cheap thrift store pot, sunlight spilling across the floor, I realized I was finally lucky to be away from her. The final step was signing the divorce papers. I didn't drag it out. Didn't demand more than was fair. I didn't need a war. I needed peace. When I met her at the attorney's office, she barely made eye contact. She looked tired, hollow, smaller than I remembered. The woman who once screamed in public that I'd never be good enough now couldn't even speak in a private room without shaking. She signed without a word. I did the same. And when we left, she lingered by the doorway. I think she expected me to say something, to ask why, or offer forgiveness or closure. Instead, I just nodded once and walked out into the daylight. She wasn't owed anything more. Because the truth is, closure doesn't come from the person who broke you. It comes from what you build afterward. And I was building something again. 6 months later, I wasn't just surviving, I was living. I'd taken a new job at a nonprofit warehouse. Smaller paycheck, but better people. The kind who notice when you've had a bad day and don't use it against you. I started hiking again. Bought a camera off Craigslist and started taking photos of old barns and broken fences and the kind of wild beauty you never see when you're buried in someone else's chaos. Even joined a book club. Me. A book club. I hated reading growing up, but something about sitting in a circle with strangers who were just trying to grow, it felt good. Simple. Real. That's where I met Harper. No, this isn't some fairy tale ending. I'm not about to say we got married, had 3 kids, and named our dog Redemption. I'm just saying she asked me one night, over paperbacks and pizza rolls, why I always showed up early and stayed late, even when I never talked much. And I told her, because silence used to feel like punishment. Now it feels like a fresh start. She smiled, and I realized I hadn't thought about Fallon in days. Not even once. That was the moment I knew I'd won. Not because I ruined Fallon's life, but because she's no longer the main character in mine.